the other day I saw that Shannon Doherty passed away on July 13th on Saturday at the age of 53. And of course, I knew she'd been battling breast cancer and I'd been following her journey. And I found her story and her as an individual truly inspiring. I find it inspiring when people are working to overcome insurmountable obstacles. And I think we can all agree cancer is one of those for sure. And being positive and being honest within this process, within that process, I don't think it's easy to do. And she was definitely doing that. And I would be listening to her podcasts and stuff like that. So I was, surprised and very saddened that she was no longer here. You don't have to know an individual personally to be inspired and moved and sad that they are no longer with us. Like I said, she was truly an inspiration and left this world too soon. But she left an indelible mark behind from being her and what she put out there. But what I want to say with this is that I'll tell you just a quick personal story because I want to get this back to living. I want to get this back. I always drive everything back to figuring out a way to live with hair loss, meaning get back to your life, the life that is waiting for you, the life that you deserve. And, I was in 9/11. I was one of the people running from the building. I lived in New York at the time, and I was living very close to the World Trade Center when the building fell, and I was in a building that was shaking and thought the building would collapse. And I never will forget that was the day for sure that I thought I would die. I'm not making that up as like some, over exaggerating that, I thought I would. No, that was the day that I knew I would die. Of course, I went to call my mom who was in LA to let her know I was okay. And then the rumble of the building began, and the last thing she heard from me was, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and click. And then she turned on the news. So I just really called to just scare the crap out of her. I will never forget that moment because it was the most terrifying moment of my life. Like I said, it's the moment you know you're going to die. Not, am I going to die? No, you're going to die. So it's like the floor is going to drop out. The building's going to collapse. Like, how is this going to occur? Those are not all literal thoughts that are going through your head, but they're all in there at one shot. You're just terrified. You're literally terrified. And this is the last day on earth. But I made it out of there and I got outside running from the other building, and when it was falling and got to Staten Island, and there was this peace. When you get through something like that, there is this peace that occurs when you feel like your life is truly going to be over, the day that you were going to die, but you didn't, you escaped it, right? There is this time period that exists afterwards. And I was just telling this to a friend of mine the other day because it came to my mind. There's this time period that exists, and it's a very short window because life just comes right back at you. And this was in 2001, and my hair loss began in 1999. So I had already been living with hair loss. So of course, hair loss was already a part of my devastating existence. But in that period afterwards, there's this peace, sense of peace, I can't explain. And this feeling that you can pretty much almost do anything. I don't know what it is, you name it, but you can do it. It doesn't matter what it is. You can do it. You can do it. There's a certainty of self and a peace within that, because it was that was the worst thing that could have possibly ever occurred. But somehow by the grace of God, you escaped it. And so it's something within your brain flips over and you see the world in a new way for a short time, because life just comes rolling back in and we all get into the same humdrum of life and fall back into our old same patterns. And we can't really latch on to that. If you could bottle that and sell it, now that would be something worth selling. The ability to have that within us, because that would carry so many people so far in this life to do so many of the things, incredible things that they are all capable of doing, but cannot do because we are all limited by our minds, what is happening to us in our life, including hair loss, which really decimates and destroys both the lives of men and women to the point they can become incapacitated to have a life. But you wish you could bottle that, And I think about that because it's How does that go? How do you go from having that moment and then it just disappears? It's because the days go by, life comes in, and it's all forgotten. But we shouldn't forget. I shouldn't forget. But when you see people battling life-threatening, just like and I want to just clarify when I say life-threatening, like I'm talking about, we can agree there are certain diseases that will have the possibility of truly killing you. Hair loss is like a disease of the spirit. I think it was Spencer Coburn that called it a cancer of the spirit. And there are people, in both men and women, but I communicate with women that have told me that they have been, I'm going to use the word, unalive themselves because of their hair loss. Like they cannot be on this earth anymore. They can't do it. They just can't see a way forward. And I always want to speak towards this because there was a point in my life that came after this point that my hair loss kept progressing. And if you don't know, I have 25 years of hair loss. I've worn wigs since 2012. I have female pattern baldness. And then I got an inflammatory alopecia in 2022 and I shaved my head last year. So obviously this is a wig. But in my 20s, I lived in I was just going through the motions of life with this inability to just get it, being able to get it done, but not being able to really enjoy life because I was so overcome by my sadness, so overcome by my depression of hair loss. There would be no future. To me, there could be no future if I couldn't have my hair back. And I was born with enough hair for 3 people. How could life be so cruel that this would be taken from me at the age of 21 or the beginning of starting to be taken from me, since female pattern baldness is progressive? I couldn't comprehend. I prayed. I went to the church. I prayed to St. Jude. I left the paper 9 days. If you're Catholic, you know the deal. But I lived in this state of suffering because what I was wanting could never be. And I feel like this is going to be a little bit all over the place, but I'm just going to get out all my thoughts. But I told my mom, I'm just praying to St. Jude and everything. And, she was saying, sometimes I get a little teary when I talk about this, but because hair loss for me was so emotional and devastating. And I think people need to know that because sometimes they see a person at a certain point in time and they don't realize the life, what the journey that it took to get there. And I was saying, I'm praying and nothing's happening. And my mom is like, sometimes you're praying for like the impossible. It's an impossibility that is not meant to be in this world from above. Okay. You're praying for the wrong thing, basically. So you have to pray for something more doable. So at that point in time, then I changed my prayer from please let my hair grow back in thick and strong, all of it, to if this is what was meant to be for me in this world, please give me the strength and the ability to be able to handle this and to cope with this in my life. And that became my new prayer. Not give me my hair back, not even stop my hair loss, but if this is what is meant to be, give me the strength to be able to handle it. And so, but anyways, fast forwarding a little bit towards this, because this story would be very long. And I started the Women's Hair Loss Project in 2007. I started blogging my journey because there was just nothing online. There's no one to connect with or whatever. In doing that, I found healing and community and being able to connect women with each other and connected them with myself, even though I couldn't help myself in the process of the actual loss because I was still losing myself, still watching myself erode. There was power in the community of that. And it would take many, many more years until I found a way to make this work in my life. Basically 2012, which is when I started wearing wigs. That would be the turning point. And it's not that wigs are for everybody. It's just the first time that I just really realized I had some control in this. It wasn't going to be perfect, but I had some control in how I got to portray myself and to the world. And I was not going to be a hostage to my hair loss. I didn't have to be a hostage to my hair loss. I cut my hair very short that same year. It was it's shaved now, but it was a short cut with a longer front to blend with my wigs. I didn't want to see the fall because the fall was one of the most debilitating aspects of my hair loss. And I began to live from that point on. I began to learn to live again, which did involve a number of things because then I was a social recluse and needed therapy for anxiety. And this story could go on forever, but maybe a story for another time. And I probably already told it. But I want to get back to the point when people tell me, they often tell me, I don't see a way that I can ever make this work. I don't see a way that this can ever work in my life. I wrote on my reel of mine on Instagram that I accept my hair loss because the alternative is worse. To not accept is worse than to accept for me, because that means that I'm stuck. That means I don't have the options that present themselves when you do accept. And somebody said, well, what if the alternative isn't worse? And I explained why the alternative is worse. Why not accepting held me back. To not accept meant that I was basically I was living each day. I'm 5'3". I was living each day expecting that I could be 5'10". How miserable are you going to be in this life if you need to be 5'10" every single day, but you wake up every single day 5'3"? Now that's a light comparison to draw a parallel here, but you're not going to be happy, because it is not going to happen. So we have to work with what we can work with the cards that we've been dealt to take control of this situation. And that is not an easy thing to do, but it is a doable thing to do. It is a doable situation. When people say, I don't see how I can live with this, it's meaning you don't see the way you can live with it, ... yet. That moment hasn't presented itself yet. But keep an open mind to this. Don't close yourself off to the options that do exist out there. While I'm very open about my situation to every single person on the planet, not just here online, I live my life outwardly open about my hair loss and my wigs, because to not do so with my level of anxiety would mean I would still be a hostage to this. So yes, I can rip my wig off in public. Doesn't mean I love a shaved head. It doesn't mean I loved when it was just a short haircut. That was all functional. This was not because I wanted to do it. And people see follicles on your head and they think that that's enough, that should be enough. You could probably grow it out. If I could have grown it out and it would be great, I wouldn't have lived the life that I lived, being tortured by my hair loss. I wouldn't have cut it, wore wigs, shaved my head, and suffered many years along the way. People's judgment does not help other people in this process. The person that knows what they are going through is the person dealing in the loss. Having been born with enough hair for 3 people, I was dismissed forever, because people will be like, well, you still have more hair than most people were born with. So what's the big deal? Well, it's female pattern baldness. It's progressive. That's not what I was born with. This isn't what feels like me. I don't see myself in the mirror anymore. We all have different starting points in this process. Not one is better than the other. The only thing that needs to be understood is understanding another human being, and understanding or listening, not just judging based on whatever your eyes are. And like I said in a different video, it doesn't matter when people are like, yeah, you're just who you were before. People love you for you. That's all the great stuff. That's a tiny part of this equation. The person that is dealing with this is the one that is having trouble seeing themselves in the mirror and living their life. Some people lose their jobs. Some people lose their families over hair loss. And still to this day, people are making jokes about it. And still to this day, I get negative commentary on this on my pages. Not always, and it's not by a ton of people, but it happens. Or it's a joke that it's just hair. It is not just hair to anybody that's ever lost their hair. Anybody who's ever been on the receiving end of having uncontrollable hair loss, an uncontrollable situation where you're literally watching yourself erode in the mirror, would not say that this is just hair. Somebody saying, oh, I'd shave my head, or I'd shave my head when I was 18, is not the same. Doing it by choice, knowing it can grow back, is not the same as being on the receiving end of an uncontrollable losing situation that you can't turn the ship around, or you struggle to turn the ship around to find yourself again. But the ability to do that, the ability to get back to you, exists. That's real. Exists in different ways for different people. For some people, it's through pure acceptance and mindset, or a combination of several things. It could be treatments. It could be mindset. It could be wigs with treatments and mindset. It could be the acknowledgement of learning to accept less, learning to accept change. I've had to do that. And the ability to speak freely on it. I know it's not for everybody. I know that you can be on the receiving end of a negative response, but I think there is a greater gain personally. I would proceed with caution on that, and don't do it until you're strong enough to do it. But you're not under the thumb of it. You're not under the thumb of somebody Oh, you're thinning. Oh, you wear a wig. I will tell you I wear a wig before you tell me I wear a wig. I will show you my shaved head before before anything else. Like, there is power in that. We have power within all of this. And again, it's not for everybody. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. There's no right, there's no wrong. I know people that have told me that they have not told their significant others or their spouses about their hair loss, and they have never seen them without their hair. And people are like, how is that possible? That can't be possibly a thing. It happens. I've been told it more than once. And when I've talked about it on Instagram, people come out and say, absolutely. The right way to live in this situation is the way that allows you to live your life. And that's going back to what I wanted to start with. There are situations where your life can be really taken from you, where you get not many choices in that matter. Accidents happen every day. My sister-in-law was in one recently that she nearly lost her life literally from one day to the next. That would be a tragedy. And we lose so much of our time and we lose so much of our lives to our hair loss. I am saddened over the amount of time that I lost to my hair loss, which was over a decade, I'd say, from 1999 till 2012, and then I had a little bit of a backslide after 2022, after getting an inflammatory alopecia and having to learn to live with a different type of hair loss, learn to work with a new type of wig and whole different types of situations, shaving my head. So a relearning process within that. But the one thing that I knew leading up to knowing I had to shave my head was that was the only move left to make. And I did not want to relive my 20s again. I did not want to lose another decade of my life because this second situation presented itself. And it was very painful for me to have to go through that. It was very painful for me to have to shave my head. Even talking about it still makes me tear up. I'm not going to be the person that's going to be sitting here and being like, you know what, that was whatever empowering statement of baldness should be, the thing that is the cool thing to say. I'm going to be honest about my situation. I'm going to be transparent that it's been very difficult. And be transparent that while I can go out in a shaved head, it is not my preferred look. It is not my preferred choice. It is functional and it is survival. But I choose life and choosing wanting to live and choosing striving to live over hair loss taking over my life. And it's finding a way to make that work within your life because it exists. There are probably a number of different factors that can contribute to this and make this actually happen in different ways, depending on the individual. But you have to know you have control in this, even when you feel like you have none. And I think that I started this because I just wanted to talk about living. Because when I reshared a reel on Instagram of Shannon Doherty speaking to People magazine and her saying, she wanted to live. She wasn't afraid of dying, but she wanted to live forever. And her life is gone. And I wrote, each day we wake up, we get a choice. We get that choice. We get an option. Option to live is on the table. I don't know what happened yesterday. I don't know what happened last year. I don't know what happened in the last 5 years. But what I do know is that each day that we open our eyes, we get an option. The option there is to live. We have to really work on seizing that gift and seizing that option. And I know it's hard. So please understand when I say that, I'm not making light of how devastating hair loss is. If anybody knows how devastating hair loss is, I guarantee you it's me. But I think it's sad how many of us have lost so much of a portion of our lives, time with families, time spent with people that have kids. They've lost time with their kids, their parents, to hair loss. And when we die, when we going into the dirt, nobody is going to give an award out for the best hair ever. What will matter is how we live. What will matter is who we are. What will matter is how we cared for other people, the difference that we made in this world. How do we make that happen while we're alive? Make ourselves feel good as well within this process, because that is important. How we feel colors this whole thing. And people need to stop judging other people for the decisions that they make within their hair loss, or stop telling people they don't have a sufficient amount of loss to qualify as hair loss because of whatever they're seeing. Nobody's in a position to make that judgment. The person that is losing their hair knows better than anybody else. People need to operate with more kindness and care and compassion. We get choices. Remember that. We get choices in this life, in this hair loss life. Difficult ass choices, but there's still choices. There's still choices that can help us to move forward. There's still choices that can enable us to get back to ourselves. Maybe it won't be entirely the same. Maybe it'll be modified. Maybe it'll be a little bit different, but you can still have a great life, laugh, smile, have all of the things that you wanted. That exists, and that is real.